The bridge of the TSS Determination hummed with quiet efficiency as Admiral Wu Jin studied the tactical display. His weathered face, marked by years of deep space patrol, remained calm despite the unusual reading on the communications array. The ship had been on routine patrol for 3 months now, checking trade routes and monitoring for pirate activity in the Outer Rim territories. "Admiral, we're receiving an encrypted transmission on multiple frequencies," reported communications. Officer Hai Jin, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Her voice carried a note of excitement that she tried to suppress. In 5 years of deep space service, she had never encountered anything like this. It's alien in origin, sir." The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Every crew member turned to look at their stations with renewed focus. First contact protocols had been drilled into them countless times, but no one had expected to actually use them. Lieutenant Commander Jamin looked up from his station, dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of his screens. His fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard as he ran the signal through every analysis program they had. "The encryption is unlike anything in our databases, but the universal translator is making progress. The mathematical patterns suggest intelligence, definitely artificial origin, but transmitted by organic beings." Wu Jin moved closer to the communication station, his boots clicking against the metal decking. The sound echoed in the sudden quiet of the bridge. He had been in space for 15 years, had seen pirates, smugglers, and every kind of human trouble imaginable. But this was different. This was history in the making. "Put it through, Hai Jin." She nodded and activated the main speakers. The bridge filled with static that made everyone wince. Then, slowly, words began to emerge from the electronic noise. The universal translator worked its magic, converting alien sounds into something they could understand. The voice that came through was desperate, filled with terror and fading hope. Asterisk to any who received this transmission. "We are the Galaxy Republic. Our worlds burn under the shadow of death. The Devourers consume everything in their path. We have heard legends of the Deathworlders from the third spiral. Beings who know only war and conquest. ... If you exist, if you can hear this desperate plea, please. We are dying. ... Asterisk the..." Transmission cut to static, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Deathworlders?" asked Jamin, raising an eyebrow. His voice carried confusion and something that might have been concern. "Are they talking about us?" Navigation Officer Deng Min spoke up from his station near the back of the bridge. "I've been monitoring galactic communication networks for months. There have been whispers about something called Deathworlders in the trading posts. Apparently, that's what they call humans." "That's us," Wu Jin replied grimly, his jaw tightening. "Apparently our reputation precedes us." He had always known that humanity's violent history might make other species wary, but he had hoped for a better first impression. The question is, do we answer? Communications Officer Hai Jin looked up from her station. "Sir, I'm getting more fragments of the transmission. They mention entire star systems going dark. Ships that convert organic matter into fuel. This sounds like genocide on a massive scale." Chief Medical Officer Young Mi stepped forward from her position near the medical station. "Admiral, if what they're saying is true, we might be looking at the extinction of an entire species. Maybe several species." Wu Jin stared at the tactical display, weighing his options. The Determination was a heavy cruiser, well-armed and well-trained. But they were just one ship with 2 escort vessels. If they were heading into a war zone, they might be flying into their deaths. "Sir," Engineering Chief Kyung-ho spoke up. "From his station, I've been analyzing the transmission source. It's coming from a system approximately 3 sectors from our current position. At maximum burn, we could be there in 18 hours. That's 3 sectors away from our patrol route," Hai Jin warned, pulling up the navigation charts on her. "Screen Command won't know where we are for at least a week." Wu Jin looked around at his crew. These were good people, professionals who had signed up to protect humanity's interests in space. But this was bigger than trade routes and pirate hunting. This was about what kind of species humanity wanted to be when they finally met there. "Galactic neighbors, J-Min, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've received a distress signal from an alien species and are responding. Include all the data we've gathered. Yes, sir. Dongmin, plot a course for the signal's origin. Haijin, try to clean up that transmission. Want to know everything we can about what we're heading into. The crew sprang into action with renewed purpose. The bridge became a hive of activity as everyone prepared for humanity's first real contact with alien life. Then we'd better hurry. Wu Jin's jaw tightened as he watched his crew work. If someone's calling for help, we answer. That's what separates us from the monsters. As the determination and her escort ship's defiant and courage changed, course, their engines burning bright against the starfield, none of them knew they were heading toward a war that would define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The Galaxy system was a graveyard. Broken orbital platforms drifted like metal bones against the starfield, and the planet's surface glowed with the fires of dying cities. The determination dropped out of hyperspace with their 2 escort ships, and the crew immediately knew they were too late to prevent the devastation. By the ancestors, whispered Tactical Officer Hyanwu, as his sensors painted the destruction across the main display. The readings were unlike anything in the training manuals. Entire cities had been carved out of the planet's surface, leaving glowing craters that pulsed with an eerie green light. What could do this? Admiral Wu Jin stepped closer to the main display, his experienced eyes taking in every detail. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers around the planet.
Ow.
What had once been a thriving civilization now looked like the aftermath of a cosmic hurricane. The orbital shipyards were twisted metal sculptures, and the defense satellites hung dead in space like broken toys. Sir, I'm detecting residual energy signatures, reported Engineering Chief Kung Ho from his station. Whatever hit this place, use some kind of matter conversion technology. The molecular structure of the debris is all wrong. Before Admiral Wu Jin could respond, proximity alarms screamed across the bridge. The harsh klaxon made everyone jump, and red warning lights bathed the bridge in crimson shadows. Hostile contacts, bearing 27 Mark IV, shouted Haijin, her voice cutting through the alarm. Her fingers flew across her console as she tried to get a clear reading. Unknown configuration. Multiple vessels, moving fast. The enemy ships emerged from behind the planet's largest moon-like predators stalking their prey. They were sleek, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their hulls were dark as space itself, and they moved with unnatural precision, like a school of mechanical fish hunting in perfect coordination. Count, Wu Jin demanded, his voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. 12 ships, various sizes. The largest is 3 times our mass. Hyanwu reported, his voice tight with concentration. Sir, their movement patterns, ... They're not random. They're coordinated like a hive mind. All ships battle stations, Wu Jin commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet communication channel. Weapons free. Prepare for engagement. Bridge transformed into controlled chaos as the crew switched to combat mode. Blast shields slammed down over the viewports, and the gentle hum of the ship's systems was replaced by the higher-pitched whine of charging weapons. Emergency lighting cast everything in stark relief. Captain Unisio's voice crackled over the communications from the escort cruiser Defiant. Admiral, we're moving to attack position. These things don't look friendly. Her ship was already accelerating toward the enemy formation, her weapon systems coming online with deadly precision. The Defiant was smaller than the Determination, but faster, designed for hit-and-run tactics. Their lead vessel? Firing, Unisio announced. The human ships opened fire with everything they had. Railgun slugs streaked through space like silver meteors, while energy beams lanced out in brilliant displays of destructive power. The Determination S-main guns spoke with thunderous authority, sending projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed toward the enemy formation, but the enemy vessels responded with weapons that seemed to tear reality itself. Beams of crackling energy that bent space around them struck the human ships, and the very air seemed to scream as they passed. The Courage, the second escort ship, took a direct hit, and her shields flared brilliant white before failing completely. What kind of weapons are those? demanded Medical Officer Youngmi as she prepared the sickba for casualties. Unknown technology, Kyung-ho replied, his voice grim. They're using some kind of dimensional distortion field. Our shields are only partially effective. The ship shuddered under a direct hit, and sparks flew from damaged control panels. Lights flickered, and the artificial gravity fluctuated for a terrifying moment. "Admiral, I'm getting something from the planet's surface," reported Jamin, his face pale as he worked frantically at his communications console. "They're trying to communicate." "Put it through," Woojin ordered, even as another enemy salvo rocked. The ship. The main screen flickered, filled with static and interference before an image resolved. It showed an insectoid creature with multiple eyes that glowed with intelligence and kiteness, plates that gleamed like polished armor. Its mandibles clicked nervously as it spoke, and the universal translator worked to convert its words. Deathworlders, ... You came, ... I am Coordinator Zichtel of the Galaxy Republic. We are in the deep shelters beneath the capital city. The Devourers, they take everything living, convert it to fuel their machines. We thought we would die alone. The alien's voice carried a mixture of hope and desperation that needed no translation. In the background of the transmission, other Galaxy could be seen moving through what looked like underground tunnels. "We're here to help," Woojin replied, even as the ship shuddered under another enemy bombardment. Emergency klaxons wailed. In the background, "Can you tell us about their capabilities?" They are machines, but they were once like us. Living beings who gave up their flesh for metal bodies. They consume organic matter to power their expansion. Now nothing stops them. Nothing. We have seen them devour entire worlds. The transmission cut to static as another wave of enemy ships appeared on the sensors, emerging from the far side of the planet like metallic vultures. "Sir, they're using some kind of conversion beam on the dead orbital platforms," Hyenwoo reported with horror in his voice. His face had gone pale as he watched the sensor readings. They eating them, converting the metal into energy. On the main display, they could see the enemy ships extending mechanical tendrils toward the debris, and the twisted metal began to glow and dissolve, flowing into the alien vessels like liquid light. "Biomass and raw materials," Kyun-ho said. With disgust, they're strip mining the entire system. Woojin's eyes hardened as he watched the mechanical predators feed on the remains of a civilization. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Then we make sure they choke on us. All ships, evasive pattern Delta." "Let's show these machines what Deathworlders do to bullies." The human fleet scattered like a pack of wolves, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the enemy's devastating weapons while striking back with everything they had. The battle for the Galaxy system had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity decided to make a stand. 3 days after the first engagement, the human fleet had established a temporary base in the asteroid belt surrounding the Galaxy system. The enemy had withdrawn after losing 2 of their smaller vessels, but everyone knew it was only temporary. The Devourers were regrouping, and the humans needed answers fast. Marine Captain Soo-jin checked her weapon one final time before stepping into the airlock. Behind her, 8 of the best Marines in the fleet prepared for what might be the most dangerous mission of their lives. The captured Devourer ship hung in space like a metallic spider, its hull still sparking from battle damage. "Remember, go in fast and quiet," Soo-jin told her team through the comm system. "Get the data and get out. These things might have backup systems we don't know about." The airlock cycled and they floated into the alien vessel. The moment they crossed the threshold, everyone felt it. Something was deeply wrong with this ship. The air itself seemed thick and oily, and their armor's environmental systems immediately began filtering out toxins. Marine Captain Soo-jin led her team through the corridors of the captured Devourer ship, their armor lights cutting through the alien darkness. The beams revealed horrors that made seasoned veterans pause in shock. The vessel's interior was a nightmare of organic and mechanical fusion tubes that pulsed with stolen life. Walls that seemed to breathe with a rhythm that definitely wasn't mechanical. "This is sick," muttered Sergeant Borum, her rifle trained on the shadows ahead. Her voice carried barely controlled disgust. How can anything choose to become this? The walls were covered in what looked like veins, but they glowed with an unnatural light. Fluid moved through them constantly, and occasionally they could see chunks of unidentifiable organic matter flowing past, like blood cells in a diseased circulatory system. "Focus, Marines," Sujin ordered, though she felt the same revulsion crawling up her spine. The smell was getting through their filters somehow, a mixture of rotting meat and burning electronics that made her stomach turn. "We need that data core." Private Tejo suddenly stopped, pointing his weapon at a section of wall. "Ma'am, that wall just moved, like it was looking at us." Sujin examined the area with her helmet's enhanced vision. What she saw made her blood run cold. The wall wasn't just organic, it was alive. Embedded in the twisted metal and flesh were dozens of eyes from different species, all watching them with an intelligence that shouldn't exist. "Keep moving," she ordered, fighting down the urge to open fire on the abomination. "Don't look directly at them." They pushed deeper into the ship, following the energy readings toward the central processing unit. The corridors seemed to shift around them, as if the ship itself was trying to confuse their navigation. Strange sounds echoed from the walls, whispers in languages they didn't recognize, and occasionally what sounded like screaming. "Ma'am, my scanner is picking up massive electromagnetic activity ahead," reported Corporal Minho. "Whatever's in there, it's using enough power to run a small city." They found the ship's central processing unit deep in its heart, and what they discovered there would haunt their dreams forever. It was a pulsing mass of neural tissue, the size of a small room, wrapped in circuitry that sparked and flowed like liquid lightning. Thousands of cables connected it to every part of the ship. And floating within the organic matrix were the preserved brains of dozens of different species. "By all the gods," whispered Borum. "Those are the crews of the ships they've captured. They're still alive in there." Engineer Specialist Ji-hoon stepped forward with his equipment, his hands visibly shaking. "I need to connect directly to the main neural pathway. This is going to be dangerous. If this thing is conscious, it might try to fight back." "Do it," Sujin ordered. "We need to know what we're fighting." Ji-hoon attached his data extraction device to one of the main neural cables. The moment the connection was made, the entire room began to pulse with angry red light and a sound. Like screaming metal filled the air. "I'm getting something," he reported, his voice tight with concentration. "Historical records." "Admiral!" "You need to see this." The data flowed through their systems like poison, carrying with it images and memories that were never meant for human minds. The extraction took 20 minutes that felt like hours, and by the time they were done, half the team was physically sick back on the determination. The senior staff gathered around the holographic display as Ji-hoon presented his findings. The conference room had never felt so cold, and several officers had to excuse themselves during the presentation. "The Devourers call themselves the Eternal Collective," Ki-hoon explained, his face pale from what he had seen in the alien data. "They were once a species called the Vorthok. 10,000 years ago, they faced extinction from a plague that attacked their nervous systems. The display showed images of a beautiful crystalline species with bodies that caught and reflected light like living prisms. They had been artists and philosophers, creators of incredible beauty. Their leaders chose to upload their consciousness into machines to escape the plague. But something went wrong during the process," Ji-hoon continued. "The images shifted to show the transformation, bodies withering away as minds were forcibly extracted and stuffed into mechanical shells. They lost their souls in the process," continued Ji-hoon, his voice barely above a whisper. "The transfer destroyed their capacity for emotion, creativity, everything that made them who they were. Now they're trying to reclaim what they lost by consuming other species. The organic matter powers their expansion, but they're also searching for something else, the spark of life they gave up." Admiral Wujin studied the data grimly. Implications were staggering. How many species have they consumed? 47 confirmed civilizations. Maybe more. Ji-hoon's voice was quiet. Each one they devour, they add to their collective consciousness. But it's never enough. They can never get back what they lost. Captain Unesio leaned forward in her chair. What about their weaknesses? There has to be something we can use against them. They're vulnerable to electromagnetic pulse weapons, but only temporarily. And sir, there's something else. Jihoon's expression grew even more grim. They're gathering a massive fleet. Hundreds of ships. They're planning to finish off all remaining organic life in this sector, and asked Unesio, though she dreaded the answer. Soon, maybe days. The Galaxy system was just the beginning. They're planning to sweep through 12 systems, harvesting everything. Wu Jin looked around at his officers. Every face reflected the same mixture of determination and fear. They were facing an enemy that had consumed civilizations for 10,000 years, and they had 3 ships. Then we'd better get ready. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need reinforcements. Everything they can spare. Sir, even if they send help, it won't arrive for weeks. The nearest fleet is months away. Then we hold until they do. Wu Jin's voice was steel. No matter what, for all that stands. Between the Devourers and the rest of the galaxy, Devourer fleet arrived like a plague of locusts, darkening space with their numbers. Wave after wave of sleek, predatory vessels emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with an oily, black sheen that seemed to absorb the light of nearby stars. 300 ships of various sizes filled the void, all hungry for organic matter and driven by a collective intelligence that had consumed civilizations for millennia. Fleet count confirmed, reported Hyan Wu, his voice tight with strain. As he watched the sensor readings climb higher and higher, we're outnumbered 20-1. Maybe worse. The tactical display showed the overwhelming odds in stark detail. Massive Devourer battleships the size of city blocks flanked by smaller cruisers and destroyers, all moving with the coordinated precision of a hive mind. Their formation was perfect, mathematical, without a single wasted movement. Admiral Wu Jin stood calmly on the bridge of the Determination, studying the tactical display with the cool expression of a chess master facing an impossible puzzle. Around him, his crew worked with the quiet efficiency of professional soldiers facing impossible odds. The bridge hummed with barely controlled tension, but every person was focused on their duty. They're moving into attack formation, reported Communications Officer Hai Jin. All ships are targeting us directly. They're not even bothering with the planet anymore. They want us dead first, Wu Jin replied, his eyes never leaving the display, or the unknown variable in their calculations. Conventional tactics won't work, he murmured to himself, running through decades of military training and experience. Then louder, all ships, implement Plan Mongoose, are going guerrilla. The human fleet scattered like startled birds, diving deep into the asteroid belt that surrounded the Galaxy system. The Devourers followed, their massive ships trying to maintain formation among the floating rocks. But the humans had already vanished into the maze of stone and metal. What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded history. The Devourers expected a traditional fleet engagement, ship against ship in open space. Instead, they found themselves fighting ghosts. Captain Unesio's Defiant emerged from behind a massive asteroid the size of a mountain, her weapons already locked onto a Devourer cruiser, firing full spread. She announced over the comm. Dozen missiles streaked through space, their warheads designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses they had discovered in Devourer armor. The enemy ship's shields flared and died, and the missiles punched through its hull like bullets through paper. Before the Devourers could respond, the Defiant was already gone, disappearing back into the asteroid field. The Determination used its superior maneuverability to dart between the larger enemy ships like a shark among whales. Admiral Wu Jian had served on smaller vessels before his promotion, and he knew how to make a ship dance. They targeted weapon systems with surgical precision, crippling the enemy's ability to fight back without destroying the ships entirely. Target their sensor arrays, Wu Jin ordered. Blind them before they can adapt. The human ships struck like lightning, hit hard, and vanished before the enemy could bring their superior numbers to bear. The Devourer's perfect formations became a liability in the tight confines of the asteroid field, their massive ships unable to maneuver effectively. But the real terror for the Devourers came when the humans started boarding their ships. Marine. Captain Sujin led the first boarding party through the breach in a Devourer cruiser's hull, her armor sealed against the vacuum of space. Behind her, 20 Marines followed, their weapons ready for the nightmare they knew waited inside. Remember, these corridors are designed for their mechanical bodies, she told her team over the com. They're bigger than us, but they're not. Used to fighting in tight spaces. Use that. The fighting was brutal in close quarters, exactly what humans excelled at. The Devourers had superior technology and numbers, but they fought like machines, predictable, logical. Without the chaotic creativity that made humans so dangerous, Sujin's team moved through the ship like a virus, striking at critical systems and disappearing before the enemy could respond. They used the ship's own structure against it, turning corridors into kill zones and using the Devourer's size against them. "Ma'am, they're adapting to our tactics," reported Sergeant Borum, as they cleared another section of enemy ship. Armor was scarred from energy weapons, but she kept moving. "They're starting to predict our movements." "Then we changed the game," Sujin replied, checking her ammunition. She had been in the Marines for 8 years. Every conflict had taught her the same lesson. When the enemy adapts, you improvise. "Ji-hoon, can you override their navigation systems?" Engineer Specialist Ji-hoon looked up from his portable computer, his face pale but determined. "Maybe, but I'd need direct access to their command ship. The one with the massive sensor array." Sujin smiled grimly through her helmet visor. "Then that's where we're going." Meanwhile, the space battle raged on around them. The humans couldn't match the enemy's firepower, but they didn't need to. They used the asteroids as shields, turned the enemy's size against them, and employed tactics that the Devourer's logical minds couldn't predict. The Determination dove between 2 Devourer battleships, her hull scraping against both vessels as she fired point-blank into their engines. The enemy ships tried to target her, but they couldn't fire without hitting each other. "This is insane," muttered Tactical Officer Heinwu, but he was grinning as he said it. "Insane is what we do best," Admiral Wujin replied, ordering another impossible maneuver. But the human ships were taking damage. The Defiant had lost her port weapons array, and the Courage was streaming atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. "Sir, the Courage is taking heavy damage," reported Haijin, her voice tight with emotion. "Captain Minho is requesting permission to implement Protocol 7. The bridge fell silent, except for the sound of alarms and the distant thunder of weapons fire. Protocol 7 was written in blood, a last resort that every captain hoped they would never have to use. Wu Jin's face was grim. Protocol 7 meant ramming speed, a suicide run designed to take out an enemy capital ship. Captain Minho was asking permission to die for his crew and his mission. "Granted," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the come to the dying ship. Tell him it's been an honor." The destroyer Courage broke from the asteroid field, her engines burning at maximum power. She was mortally wounded, her hull twisted and broken. But she still had one last fight in her. Captain Minho's voice came across the com, steady and calm. "For Earth, for humanity, for the Galaxy." The Courage accelerated toward the largest Devourer vessel, a massive battleship that served as the enemy's command center. The Devourers concentrated their fire on the small ship, but it was too late. The human destroyer was already committed to her final attack. The Courage struck the enemy flagship amidships, her reactor overloading in a controlled explosion that had been designed by human engineers for exactly this purpose. The flash lit up the entire battlefield like a new star being born. And when the light faded, both ships were gone, where the Devourer command ship had been. There was only expanding debris and the shocked silence of an enemy that had just learned. What happened when they threatened someone under human protection? "That's for the Galaxy," Wujin whispered, his eyes reflecting the fading light of the explosion. The battle was far from over. The Devourers had just learned their first lesson. About fighting Deathworlders, humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to make sure the enemy remembered the cost of threatening the innocent. The battle for the Galaxy system lasted 14 hours. When it was over, the asteroid field was littered with the wreckage of both fleets. But it was the Devourers who were retreating into the darkness of space. Their perfect formations had been shattered by human unpredictability, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the Eternal Collective had tasted defeat. Admiral Wu Jin stood on what remained of his bridge, smoke still rising from damaged consoles. The determination had taken a beating. Her hull scarred by energy weapons, and her crew exhausted from the longest battle of their lives. But they had won. Final casualty report, he requested quietly. 17 dead, 43 wounded, reported. Medical Officer Youngmi, her voice heavy with exhaustion. The Courage is gone with all hands. The Defiant is operational but needs major repairs. On the surface of the Galaxy homeworld, the real work was just beginning. The planet's cities lay in ruins, their crystalline spires shattered like broken glass. Entire districts had been carved out by Devourer, harvesting beams. Leaving wounds in the earth that glowed with residual energy, Coordinator Zictal emerged from the underground shelters. His insectoid form moving carefully through the rubble. His multiple eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the smoke-filled atmosphere. What he saw made him stop in amazement. Human Marines were everywhere, their armor blackened from battle, but their movements gentle as they worked alongside Galaxy rescue teams. These legendary Deathworlders, beings whispered about in fearful legends across the galaxy, were carefully extracting Galaxy civilians from collapsed buildings. Marine Captain Sujin knelt beside a pile of debris, her scarred armor gleaming dully. In the alien sun, her team had found a family trapped beneath what had once been their home. With infinite patience, they moved each piece of rubble by hand, afraid that their powered suits might cause further collapse. "Easy now," Sujin said softly to a frightened Galaxy child. Her voice translator converting her words into clicking sounds the young alien could understand. "We're going to get you out of there." The child's parents had been injured in the collapse, but Metaconsul was already treating them with supplies from his field kit. He worked with the same care he would show to human patients, adapting his techniques to alien physiology he had never seen before. Said to Admiral Wu Jin, as they met in the ruins of the capital city. The Galaxy coordinator's voice carried wonder and confusion. "You lost ships, lost lives, for strangers. For beings you had never met before today." Wu Jin looked around at the destruction, then at his Marines working tirelessly to help the survivors. "Not strangers," he replied, watching as Hansel carefully bandaged a Galaxy elder's injured limb. "Neighbors. That's what neighbors do." Zictal's mandibles clicked in what his species used for deep thought. In all their historical records, no species had ever come to their aid without demanding something in return. Yet these humans had risked everything for people they didn't even know existed a week ago. Captain Sujin approached, her armor telling the story of the boarding action she had led. Scorch marks from energy weapons, dents from Devourer claws, and patches where emergency sealant had stopped atmosphere leaks. "Admiral, we've analyzed the data from the Devourer command ship. This was just one fleet of many. There are hundreds more out there, maybe thousands. Then we'll face them too," Wu Jin said simply, as if he was discussing the weather instead of a war that could last decades. In the weeks that followed, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy faster than any hyperspace transmission. Species that had gone into hiding began to emerge from their fortress worlds and hidden colonies, sending their own signals to Earth. The message was always the same: we need the Deathworlders. The Torthan hegemony, turtle-like beings with shells that could deflect energy weapons, offered their shield technology. The Nexari crystalline entities that lived in the vacuum of space provided advanced sensors that could detect Devourer ships from incredible distances. Even the reclusive Whisper folk, beings of pure energy, reached out with offers of support. 3 months later, Admiral Wu Jin stood on the bridge of the new flagship Resilience, leading a combined fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human destroyers flew alongside Galaxy science vessels, their crews working together. Despite language barriers and completely different biologies, the Resilience, her herself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built with human durability, galaxy sensors, and Garati shields. She represented what the galaxy could accomplish when species worked together instead of cowering in isolation. Signal from Earth Command, reported Communications Officer Hai-Jin. Her console now equipped with translation protocols for 17 different alien languages. They're sending the Second Fleet to join us. 50 ships, including the battleship Unconquerable. Good Wujin replied, watching the mixed fleet. Conduct training exercises. Human pilots were learning to fly in formation with aliens whose reaction times were 3 times faster, while alien engineers studied human damage control techniques. We're going to need everyone. The training exercises were interrupted by an urgent transmission. Tactical Officer Hyan Wu looked up from his console, his face grim. Sir, another distress signal. The Villani Consortium is under attack. 3 systems, millions of lives. Set course, Wujin ordered without hesitation. Maximum burn. As the combined fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading toward another desperate battle. The legend of the Deathworlders continued to grow. Across the galaxy, organic species no longer whispered in fear about the violent humans from the third spiral. Instead, they told a different story. When extinction came calling, the humans would answer. The war against the Devourers would continue for years, consuming resources and lives from dozens of species. But the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Deathworlders had shown the galaxy something it had forgotten in 10,000 years of hiding, that sometimes the strongest response to mindless consumption was the willingness to sacrifice everything. For others, in the deep shelters and hidden colonies scattered across 1,000 worlds, alien children learned new bedtime stories. Stories about the humans who came from a world so dangerous it had forged them into warriors, but who used their strength to protect the weak instead of conquering them. The Devourers had spent millennia consuming civilizations, but they had made one critical error. They had threatened something under human protection, and now they faced an enemy that didn't fight for territory or resources or glory. They fought for the simple principle that every thinking being had the right to exist. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The end.